Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, depending on where in the world you're joining us from today. My name is Maria Alonso Martinez, and I'm part of the Circular Development team at ICLEI Board Secretariat. I'm very excited to be here today representing ICLEI Circulars and moderating this webinar. Today's presentation is part of the webinar series called Circular Cities in Action, which showcases city examples to promote circularity in several priority sectors. After the webinars of circular plastics and circular buildings and constructions, today we'll take a deep dive into circular food systems. This webinar series is implemented as part of the Circle Lab for Cities project in cooperation with Circular Economy, Metabolic, and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which is co-organizing today's webinar with us. So welcome, and before we start, we have some housekeeping rules to ensure the webinar goes smoothly. This session is being recorded, and the recording will be available afterwards on the Circulars webpage. See the link in the chat. So please add your questions to our panelists in the Q&A box throughout the whole session. We will collect and address them at the end of the session. Lastly, keep an eye on the chat for relevant links like the one we just shared. Today's agenda starts with a thematic introduction by ICLEI and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, followed by the panelists' 10 minutes presentations that come from 5 different continents. Today, we have the pleasure to have with us Ava Richardson, Sustainability Director of the City of Baltimore, US, Leah, Public Policy Analyst of the City of São Paulo in Brazil, Natomi Shimatsu, International Cooperation Officer of the City of Kyoto, Japan, Philip Schuler, Global Impact Manager of Too Good To Go, and Franklin Otiende, researcher of Kisumu Local Interaction Platform in Kenya, as well as his colleague Harrison Otieno, Chairman of the Kibuye Market Waste Management, also in Kenya. After their presentations, we will finish this event with a Q&A session and some closing remarks and resources to share. Today's webinar will showcase city-led and supported interventions that allow to shift away from linear food value chains following the take, make, and waste models and support the transition to circular food systems. In practice, we will look at how local governments can reduce food loss and waste in a systemic way. But first, we would like to define circular food systems. Circular food systems offer a lens to look at food systems from a value chain perspective to minimize the amount of resources extracted and the amount of waste being produced in a systemic manner. Circular food systems are nature positive, they prioritize regenerative production, favor reuse and sharing practices, reduce resource inputs and pollution, and ensure resource recovery for future uses, among other benefits. As such, they close resource loops and pursue cross-sectoral synergies that contribute to the resilience of a territory. So in order to achieve all these, circular food systems aim to address several challenges that arise all along linear food models. Current dominant globalized linear food systems based on the take, make, and waste model trigger far-reaching detrimental socioeconomic and environmental effects. As such, they struggle to meet the food demands of a growing population and face external shocks such as resource scarcity, climate change, and health crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic. This is the result of several vulnerabilities happening all along the value chain. And the first one that we encounter is the high dependency on finite resources. Ultra-processed food products are usually more resource intensive, which means that they tend to require more energy, water, packaging, and land, among other resources, and moreover, our global food systems are dependent on a small number of cross species. And among everything, the amount of arable land available for agriculture is decreasing every year. Following the linear value chain, another vulnerability we encounter is that 32% of all food loss and waste come from family production, and 33% arise during the storage and processing. We also see wasteful and disaggregated distribution practices that inform a supermarketization trend, which minimizes diversity of sources to acquire food and disconnect producers and consumers. Another vulnerability is that perfectly edible food often goes to waste. Up to 70% of the food available to consumers go directly into the bin. Last but not least, on the end of the value chain, we find that organic waste is not really being fully utilized, since less than 2% of nutrients in food byproducts in cities are revalorized safely and productively. This is why our food system needs to change. And as we saw, there are vulnerability arising all along the value chain, but usually local governments primarily concentrate their efforts on waste management and some procurement practices, as both fall under an agency perspective. Nevertheless, many different strategies do exist for them to support the transition away from the linear food system. And one of them is the application of a circular perspective, which encompasses diverse strategies aiming at closing resource loops and maximizing resource efficiency to ensure food production and consumption respects and protects ecosystem boundaries and has a nature positive impact. This way, we could address some of the vulnerabilities along the linear food chain, and we hope today's examples can inspire different interventions in this direction. Today's examples to be presented have been categorized under the Circular Cities Action Framework, also known as the 5 Rs. You can see the link to the resource in the chat. And this framework has been developed by ICLEI, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Circular Economy, and Metabolic, introduce cities to a diverse range of strategies and actions available to them as they work towards circular development at the local level. The framework provides different cities with 5 complementary strategies that can be applied to all production, consumption, and waste management processes that are either influenced by the city or its residents. So applied to the sector of food, cities can support this transition from a linear to a circular food systems through several actions all along the food value chain. And today we have 5 front-runner cities and organizations showcasing different interventions. Under Rethink, we have the City of Baltimore presenting their Food Matter program to redesign food systems governance. Under Regenerate, the City of São Paulo will present the program of Connecting the Dots to support regenerative agriculture. Afterwards, the City of Kyoto will share with us public-private initiatives to minimize food loss. And later, Too Good To Go will speak about their Cities Against Food Waste project to promote food redistribution. Lastly, the Kisumu Local Interaction Platform will present different ways to recycle organic waste from open-air markets to recover resources. Before jumping into the different presentations, I would like to give the floor to Sarah O'Carroll from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to share some of their learnings from circular food systems. So the floor is yours, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Maria. I just wanted to go back to one of the data points that Maria shared earlier in the presentation, and to show you kind of the full picture of where that data point comes from, that shows how today's food system really is hugely wasteful, with only 2% of valuable nutrients being looped by cities. I think we've gone backwards too far. Yes. Okay, I see what you've done, showing that data point of 2%. Yeah. So this is the bigger picture where you can see how small that 2% of nutrients being looped back into cities really is. So if we go to the next slide. One of our most recent reports by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, called The Big Food Redesign, really tries to highlight that rather than bending nature to produce food, that we could design food that allows for nature to thrive. Because not only is our food system wasteful, we also know that it's a large contributor to biodiversity loss. Only 4 crops make up 60% of the calories that the world's population consumes. We know that the food system is a large contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. In general, it isn't very productive, and farmer profits are decreasing. So rather than bending nature to produce food, what if we designed food for nature to thrive? And that the circular economy, we note and is obviously being highlighted here today, is a mechanism to do that. So we go on the next slide. I just wanted to share quickly kind of 3 of our biggest learnings over the last 3-4 years working with cities around the world to implement a circular vision for their food systems. So the first thing we've recognized is that food is a good entry point for the circular economy. Food systems are a top priority for mayors around the world because they support healthy diets and food security. And the circular economy provides a solutions framework for climate change and biodiversity loss when it comes to our food systems. A second key message and learning that we have is that recognizing that city governments have a critical role to play. So city governments can inform food policy, both at their local city level, but can also influence national policy development. And increasingly, cities have a really important role to play in the international institution policymaking space. Cities can adopt circular purchasing guidelines when it comes to food. They can raise awareness about opportunities. They can support byproducts being transformed into valuable nutrients. Typically, we see that through bioenergy, biodigesters and composting solutions. And we also know that many cities around the world are supporting innovation in the food and ag tech space through innovation, accelerator, incubation, and entrepreneurship programs. And then lastly, we also recognize that it's not just city governments that have a critical role to play, it's urban food actors, even more so. So we recognize that it's also international institutions and national governments that have an important role to play, particularly when it comes to agriculture and how our food is produced. And then also retailers and fast-moving consumer goods companies who, for the most part, design all of the food or the majority of the food products that we eat every day. So those are our kind of 3 big learnings from the last 4 years working in this space, that food is a good entry point for the circular economy. City governments have a critical role to play, but it's urban food actors that really can catalyze change if they work together to do so. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's learning from your food initiative and for reminding us of the importance of food to achieve circularity and the role that local governments and other urban actors can play to achieve it. So thank you. I would like to already start our journey along the 5 R's and introduce our first speaker, Ava Richardson, Sustainability Director of the City of Baltimore. So the floor is yours, Ava.
All right. Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Maria and Sarah, for that really wonderful introduction. And I'm so glad to be here talking to you all about some of the work we're doing here in Baltimore. Again, Ava Richardson, Sustainability Director for the Office of Sustainability in Baltimore City, Maryland, in the United States. And so I think Maria really provided a great framework for how the city is approaching wasted food or approaching food from a more circular perspective. We're still learning and growing in this process, but this particular image reflects how we're taking a food systems approach to address waste along the food supply chain. From the time that a food product or a seed is put into the ground to the time that it reaches your fork and wherever it goes afterwards. And that includes, I think it's really important to consider that food waste or the way that we look at food from a circular economy perspective includes the broader scope of organic waste. And that includes more than just food. It includes other organic materials, including bio-waste, wood, leaves, but here we are specifically talking about how the city manages food waste. And so we really approach it from a climate justice perspective because we understand for Baltimore City in particular, we have a waste incinerator located in a low-income, predominantly African-American community, and our food waste is getting sent there to be burned, and it's polluting the community, and it's it's causing air quality issues across the city. We also understand this is an issue of healthy soils. When we take food and put it in landfills or burn it in incinerators, we lose the opportunity to recirculate those nutrients back into our soils, and soil erosion globally is a problem. And the quality of our soils is is not just degrading, but we're becoming more and more dependent on synthetic fertilizers to support a global and national food system. And then waste management. We understand we have to train the sanitation workers, so they're very well aware of how to support the implementation of these processes, as well as other workers in the food service industry and other industries along the food supply chain. Again, of food waste, we kind of need our experts and our champions in every sector along the chain. I want to run through the slides relatively quickly. We only have a little bit of time here, but I wanted to just go through these first foundational questions to frame things. So in terms of the actions that we're addressing, so much of what we've learned here in Baltimore is that as we rethink, we really try to rethink in our approaches to food systems from a circular economy perspective. It's about logistics and coordination and really having that planning, let me go back, that planning designed from the outset. So in terms of our strategy of the circular economy, I think we're trying to apply all 9 of those R's really, but we're focusing more so in on these particular 4 ones of the rethink, reduce, reuse, and recover. And so that relates to food waste prevention when it comes to reduce, reuse, relates to food rescue, but it could also, that means feeding both people and particularly, or potentially even feeding animals in some cases, and then recover. And that can include different types of, or different approaches to food scrap recycling, which may be composting, may be anaerobic digestion. And I think in you all may refer to it as biogas in some sense. Sarah spoke really well to the role of local government or the role of government, and particularly here in Baltimore City, we see ourselves as a convener in this regard, really bringing people together, bringing industry, large institutions, academic researchers together so we can tackle these issues. And we can also help to connect people to explore new opportunities to advance a more circular food system. That includes, again, nonprofits, private sector, academic institutions, and most importantly, the members of the public, because we know so much of that waste happens, at least in the United States, at the consumer level, in people's homes and in restaurants. We always want to approach things from a win-win perspective when it comes to how we're pursuing different goals and initiatives. There's a lot of approaches, there's a lot of solutions. And so the ones that we prioritize with the limited resources that we have are the approaches that have the most benefit for our residents and that make the most sense for government. And we try to be as creative as we possibly can. And I think one of the successes that we've seen within the time we've been focusing on the Food Matters program with the support of the Natural Resource Defense Council is better coordination. So we have several educational materials that we have used to address food waste and raise awareness of what people can do inside their homes and what people can do every day to reduce wasted food, both again on the consumer end, but also what companies and organizations can do, what our large institutions can do, such as colleges and universities or hospitals for that matter, because we know that so many institutions, they're serving a large amount of food on a daily basis. This is our food waste reduction guide that we get out to residents, and it's actually a little pocket guide so people can carry it around with them, but it has some really good recommendations in terms of how to plan your meals, what to do before you shop in terms of ensuring that you're shopping your fridge or your pantry first. And the goal of this particular educational piece is to really support prevention, because we know prevention gives us the highest return on investment when it comes to circular food or food waste reduction in general, but when it comes to that broader circular food system. There's certain things that people can also do while cooking, while eating out, in ways that you can even organize your kitchen or your refrigerator or your pantry to support a more circular food or to reduce food waste in your home. Even we have here, using a smaller plate. And we try to, in some small way, educate people about or debunk some of the misunderstandings about food and date labels. This particular graphic, it's very reflective of Baltimore with our row homes in the background, but it's just breaking down the composition of, our waste system. Roughly, and this is common for most cities in the United States, roughly 3/4 or 75% of the waste collected is either compostable or recyclable. And so here, based on the 2019 waste sort, we saw that roughly 1/4 alone was food scraps in our waste system. And then another roughly 18% was other compostable materials, but that didn't include the yard waste. So it's, nearly half of what we're producing can actually be recirculated, or nearly half of the waste that we're generating is some type of organic material that can be recirculated back into our economy. And so we know we need to inform our residents of that to really see the behavior change. And that's really the goal of these particular educational materials, to see the behavior change within our residents. This reflects just some of the benefits of composting and why it is important for people to engage in that that practice. And we feature some of our local composters. This is Marvin Hayes, who is the head of the Baltimore Compost Collective, and Rodette Rhodes, who runs one of our community gardens in South Baltimore. We also developed a series of educational materials that were kind of reinvented from 1917 era food waste reduction materials. And so this was a time when the US was in World War I, and there were some really compelling materials to get people to prevent waste, but the goal at that time was to fuel the war. We thought some of the messaging there was really kind of like a lot of what we're saying today. And so we wanted to recreate it to make it more modern and more inclusive, and really reflect the demographics of Baltimore City, because 1917 was a very racially charged time as well. And so those particular images, they weren't the most progressive in terms of like gender norms and who was reflected in the images. And so we created this particular series to really highlight all of the ways that people can support food waste reduction across the city. And so that was a series of 4 posters, and we worked with the Natural Resources Defense Council to produce these educational materials, and they're available for other cities to use if you reach out to NRDC. This was another item that we produced. It's a magnet that would go on people's refrigerator. And again, just breaking down tips to reduce food waste at home. And a lot of it is focusing on how to organize your kitchen and your refrigerator, having an Eat Me First section there to really ensure that people are being more conscious, because I think the more that we can be more conscious and raise awareness about the challenges related to food waste, we will see that behavior change in our population. But we know that's just the knowledge alone is not enough. We need more infrastructure and capacity to be able to prevent and rescue food waste. And so on a food rescue perspective, one of the fundamental challenges we keep seeing, or I personally hear when food rescue is discussed, is that this assumption that we rescue food to feed disadvantaged, economically challenged populations or poor people. That is wrong. I think we have to frame it around feeding people. It shouldn't matter what the economic status of those individuals are, but the point is that we want the food to get into the bellies of people, because when people have eaten the food, we know it's not going to waste. It is great to feed disadvantaged or economically challenged populations, but that does not address the fundamental issues of food insecurity. And we have to keep that in mind. And there's also ways, I know Too Good To Go, they'll be sharing some of their work from Denmark, but there are ways to feed people to feed people surplus foods or extra food that doesn't necessarily mean it's a rescue in kind of like the traditional sense of food donations. And so there's other ways to redistribute, I should say, that any surplus foods that haven't been consumed by the initially intended population. And so I think that's something that, as I've sat through a lot of these conversations related to food waste, especially with the Food Matters Cities work through NRDC, we're continuing to hear, and we're realizing that needs to be reframed. This particular guide, excuse me, sorry, I have my alarm going off. This particular guide relates to food rescue across the city, and it was developed in partnership with NRDC and our health department to ensure that our food inspectors, when they're going out to inspect different food entities across the city, they're educating them on ways to reduce food in the city. We do have a bill in the state of Maryland, which is where Baltimore City lies, that is going to require large producers to divert their organic waste if they produce over 2 tons. That'll go into effect at the beginning of next year. So we know when it comes to compliance and ensuring that businesses are aware of how they can be compliant and ensuring that they aren't receiving, excuse me, any citations, we know it's going to be really important that one, they understand that businesses understand that prevention, rescue, and recycling are 3 different approaches they can take to be compliant with this bill. And I think that's another thing we're running into when we talk about circular food systems. A lot of people gravitate toward the recycling piece, which includes composting, because composting is very sexy, or anaerobic digestion. And those are all, that is a great solution, but we want to really get people to move up the hierarchy as much as possible. And that's been a challenge as well, getting people and institutions and food producers to focus on the prevention piece. And that what that looks like at the institutional level and at the reseller level and in our homes is going to be very different. So it is a challenge, but it is something that we know is really important. This has some information on the Good Samaritan Act in this particular educational document. And it also outlines the food safety and health guidelines that the health department enforces. This is just some information, some general information on kind of like food distribution across the city. And I think I am going to stop there. I'm probably over time. I did just want to highlight one last thing. We did begin a food scrap collection program at the Baltimore Farmers, at one of our farmers market in downtown Baltimore City. And we worked with local farmers to use that product that we're collecting, the food scraps. And it is all plant-based, but it's going to feed hogs that one of the farmers at that market takes back to her farm, and she sells that product at the farmers market as well. And so that was really a great way to support that farmer, because they're able to subsidize some of the feed required for the hogs. And it was a great way to provide a service for the residents of the city, which at the time we started this, there weren't many other options for people to drop off their food scraps across the city. And again, this was done, 100 years ago in 1917, when resources were so limited, and it was done for very different motivations and very different reasons. But we see kind of like some of these former traditions and practices coming back into play now. And I'm sorry I went over time, but thank you very much. Happy to take any questions that you all may have. Now stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Ava, for your detailed presentations about the City of Baltimore's effort. It's very inspiring to see all the different initiatives where many stakeholders are engaged. And just to highlight how coordination is very important to do interventions focused on prevention and education, among others. So thank you for that. And without further ado, I would love to introduce our next speaker that will explain to us how the Connected Dots program is supported regenerative agriculture. I would love to welcome Leah, Public Policy Analyst of the City of São Paulo in Brazil. So Leah, thank you for being here. We look forward to your inputs. The floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. Very good to be here. Someone needs to stop to share so I can share. Yeah. That's good. And it's it.
Yes, all good.
So I'll talk about connected dots, but most of all, the agriculture department and what we are doing here in São Paulo. We have other programs and very inspiring to see what you're doing in Bergamo. But we focus in Connected Dots. So Connected Dots is a project we started here in 2018. And it's about the rural area in São Paulo, especially in South area. So we have a huge city here, but we are talking about this 30% of the city that is countryside, rural area, and we need to preserve it. So it's a very complex territory where many things working together or don't working so well together, and with people with economic vulnerability, environmental preserve, but in a very huge pressure. And we have our indigenous territory over there. It takes a large amount of the land as well. And we have this issue to treat. So what you thought to think about this project is that the most sustainable policy for the rural territory is to recognize and strengthen its economic potential with environmental compatible activities. So is that fiscalization is very important to preserve, but we need something else. We need to do something else and to recognize the whole agriculture, sustainable agriculture do in this territory. It should be very important. So we think about this project in 2018, but it's still improving and going forward until now, and what I will talk about to you. So to understand how is the agriculture here in São Paulo, this here is the urban area, and this parts in green is the rural area. We have agriculture all over the city. So urban agriculture and rural agriculture, and more than 1,000 places we find until now, but we know there's more. And many of them, it's production units, that's agriculture itself, they work with this, and others is community and urban gardens and school urban gardens and other kind of agriculture in the city, and very diverse, and we aim to attend everyone. So connected dots are organized in 3 main strategies. One is training agriculture. Other one is data and evidence. We need to know more about these territories to know how and what we can do about it, and value chain to strengthen the value chain and look to everyone who works with agriculture in the city. And connected dots, it's doing a new way to go and operate in this territory. And the important things we realize, we need some technical assistant individual to each of these agriculture locals places, and we cannot do this in a place like looking distance from them. You need to know what the needs of each of them and look a collective way to think about our programs and how we are going to act with them. We have very different farmers, and we need the data, and it is a very complex, not only in the rural area, but urban as well. So here it's more or less what we did in that. We work with many strategies to go to these farmers, and the important thing is we want them to have a more regenerative way to grow. So we don't want only to go there and talk to them how they should do, but we want to discover with them what works and what are not going to work, even with conventionals. But to everyone, we're trying to give a path, a secure path to organic and agroecological agriculture. So we gave to them organic inputs and demonstrative techniques, and they have the possibility to try this in concrete, to go there and see how it works in his and soil and units. And it was very, very important, and many of them are certificate right now, and it's a continued work we have with them. But we have many results going there and work with them and planning together to each one how it's the right path to everyone. So this is another program is in progress here, the payment for environmental services. And the thing is, we pay for them, we will pay for them for the good practice they have. So if they are certificate, they have amount. If they have the forest, they have amount. And this is important because many of these people are very vulnerable, and they want to be there, but they cannot be there. They have not quality of life, or they need more incentive to can stay in these places. So this is a program that's going to be very important. And I told you we work a lot with data, so we need a system. So we develop Cis Rural. There's a system that can have all the history of what is going on in the field. As well, we can have many index and information about this population, and we can plan what we are going to do. This system is already in application with other places in Brazil as well. There's other cities in Latin America that's maybe is gonna use it as well. And we have Cis Rural with something for the technical assistance, only for our people, our team. But we have Sampa Mais Rural, that is the place everyone can find everyone, and it's a connect web. It works in a digital platform, and as well with seals that recognize all these places in the city. So this little urban garden or this huge farm, all they know, they are connected, and they are important for the city because they are doing something else for the city, not only the things individual, but collective. We form important go together. We have many actions to improve the market and disconnect with the consumers. So they need to have these products going to consumers who pays well, so they can be producing. So we do this community to support agriculture. We made some of them, or some of them are popular with low prices, and to make this food goes where we need it. As well, we did some programs to welcome in school, so children can go and see how the food are growing. So many of them, it was the first time they could eat a lettuce, and they say this is delicious. So it's different when we are there and we see how is it, and you know who is growing your food. And now, just to finish, I know my time is already gone. The agriculture goes to the strategic plans from the city. So the action plans to sustainable goals, to climate action plan, and many others. And we have this, we are in this right now to expand and consolidating connected dots to the city. So internalize the people, methods, systems, and everything. So we can do the project that is getting like 100 people in the soul to everyone in the city. And for this, we are contracting many more technical and structuring like a team to do so. And so we have many materials about the project. So if anyone can know more, you can share this and some videos so we can know a little bit more about what you're doing here in São Paulo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah, for all the insights about São Paulo. Connecting the Dots is such a reference program for Latin America. It was great to hear about your support to farmers in the quest to organic and agroecological agriculture. So thank you for that. Due to time constraints, I would like to already introduce our next speaker, Natomi Shimatsu. She's the International Cooperation Officer at the city of Kyoto in Japan. And because of the time difference, they were kind enough to record their presentation beforehand so we could see it today. I would like to thank them from the distance and remind you that any questions you have specifically for them to address, they will be happy to answer them via email afterwards. So with no more delay, we're happy to share Kyoto's intervention with you.
Hello, this is Natomi Shimatsu from the International Cooperation Team of Global Environment Policy Office of Kyoto City. Today, I would like to introduce some of Kyoto City's efforts on reducing food loss. I will start my presentation. Thank you for having me. First, I will talk about the amount of waste in our city. The amount of waste Kyoto City received decreased from its peak time in the year 2000 with 820,000 tons to 390,000 tons in 2020, making it a 50% reduction. According to the Japanese government survey of waste management in Japanese municipalities in 2020, Kyoto City's daily amount of waste per person was the lowest of all ordinance designated cities in Japan. This big momentum was triggered from the use of designated household garbage bags with extra fee. And this was introduced in 2006 to encourage citizens to purchase these garbage bags, making them cost-conscious about generating waste. This revenue is positioned as a paid garbage bag fund and utilized in projects such as the promotion of city beautification or global warming countermeasures. Also, the city is promoting efforts to realize a material cycle city by promoting the 2 R's, reducing reuse, recycling and separation, and have managed to halve the amount of waste through these efforts. Next, I would like to talk about the current situation of food loss and waste in Kyoto City. Kyoto City has conducted detailed composition surveys of household waste for more than 40 years under the guidance of Kyoto University. And according to these surveys, kitchen waste accounts for 40% of combustible household waste, of which 14% was food loss. Based on these results from the survey, we are working to reduce the total amount of food waste by focusing on food loss countermeasures. This image here is based on the 2020 survey on the composition of household waste and shows study samples collected from 89 households in the targeted districts of Kyoto City. Food loss and waste in households include untouched or leftover food, and among these, untouched food is the most common and accounts for about half of all food loss generated in households. Reasons being that the consumer did not like the taste of the product, or that the product has expired while still in the refrigerator as a result of overbuying. In March 2015, Kyoto City set Japan's first food loss and waste reduction goal of halving the amount of its peak time by 2020. And as a result, we reduced them from 96,000 tons to 57,000 tons, which is a 41% reduction. Then a new goal for 2030 was set to reach a reduction level of 50% or more from peak time, and we are currently strengthening our measures to achieve this goal. Shimatsu no Kokoro ordinance, which is Mind to Treat Their Belongings Carefully ordinance, was established in 2015 to promote 2R, reduce or reuse, and also separation and recycling waste. It was so named in the hopes that residents would become motivated to treat their belongings carefully for it to last longer, enrich their quality of life, and to embed an eco-friendlier way of living. Today, I would like to talk about Kyoto City's efforts to reduce one of the 5 R's of the City Actions Framework. Okay, so I will now introduce some of the major initiatives of Kyoto City that we are implementing in reducing food loss. Since 2012, we have implemented the Sankiri movement to reduce food loss and waste. This movement refers to Tsukaikiri, which is to stop overbuying and using products that you have purchased, Tabekiri, to eat up everything and finish everything that is on your plate, and Mizukiri, to drain off water from all kitchen waste. And this is intended to raise public awareness about this issue and to encourage residents to take up the initiative. Secondly, in 2014, we introduced promotion of zero leftover certification system. And currently over 1,500 certified restaurants, hotels, and food retailers are engaging, and we are introducing excellent model examples on our city's webpage. Next, I will move on to talk about Food Loss and Waste Reduction Month. Since 2018, October has been designated as Food Loss and Waste Reduction Month, and efforts have been made with the cooperation of supermarkets, department stores, and shopping malls in the city. One example of this is Temaedori campaign, and Temaedori is a purchasing action to reduce food waste by promoting customers to purchase products which are close to expiring by stacking them on the front side of the shelves. Since customers tend to take products from the back side of the shelf to purchase products that has a slightly longer expiration date, we are implementing this project to avoid them from doing that. Also, to increase the momentum for food loss and waste reduction, we are calling for its reduction and conducting food drives at public places, which is shown in this picture. This is where people bring in leftover food from their households, and the collected food will be donated to welfare facilities through food bank organizations. Lastly, I would like to talk about public-private partnerships to reduce food loss and waste. Kyoto City joined the Food Initiative, led by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, to promote a circular economy of food in 2020. And in August that same year, 2020, we concluded an agreement on cooperation and efforts to reduce food loss and waste with Mitsukan Holdings, a major food manufacturer of vinegars and other food products, and have been promoting efforts to raise citizens' awareness and change their behavior with the aim of reducing food loss. Kyoto City, which has a well-developed pickled food product culture, has been implementing various initiatives that lead to food cycling with Mitsukan Holdings based on the concept of fully enjoying Kyoto's vegetables without waste. Mottai Nazuke, or project to make full use of pickled products from food waste, is one collaboration example. This is a project to avoid wasting leftover food, mainly in vegetables that are usually thrown away, by promoting the knowledge of pickling to the citizens. 9 new recipes for Mottai Nazuke project using Kyoto vegetables, such as fushimi togarashi pepper and kyo okra, have been developed, and a guidebook proposing these recipes have been produced or introduced to the citizens. To wrap up, since 1980, Kyoto City has been conducting detailed surveys on the composition of garbage, and the results of these surveys have been used to set specific and ambitious goals by identifying and analyzing the actual situation of the city and using the data to consider the right measures that we should take. Kyoto City has been acting as a bridge between citizens and businesses and has been promoting initiatives in collaboration with them. And we will continue to work together with them to achieve our goal. That is all, and thank you for listening.
We would like to thank the City of Kyoto for this great presentation at a distance. I personally found very inspiring to see the city's collaboration with the University of Kyoto to collect data via surveys in order to accurately quantify food waste. And I think we all found very impressive the decline of food waste over the years. So yeah, thank you for this presentation. And without further ado, and speaking of the importance of multi-level collaboration, our next speaker will share Too Good To Go's experience in engaging cities for a common goal, reducing food waste. Philip Schuler, Global Impact Manager of Too Good To Go, will present their Citizens Against Food Waste project, which promotes food redistribution, among others. So we're very excited to hear about it, Philip. The floor is yours now.
Thank you very much, Maria, and thank you very much for inviting me. Is it possible to share my screen?
Sure.
Perfect. Let me see if that works. Can everybody see my screen? Is it okay like this?
Yeah, that's good.
All right, perfect. So thank you very much, and pleasure being here. My name is Philip Schuler. I'm Global Impact Manager at Too Good To Go. And exactly like Maria suggested, today I'll speak to you about how we as a company are engaging with cities, both in France and in Germany specifically, on our newest initiative called Cities Against Food Waste. The problems, of course, that we try to address by driving this action going forward is trying to make cities more livable and more connected to food. As you're all aware, probably all in this call, is that one of the key issues when it comes to the food system is that consumers are growingly disconnected and disassociated from where food is coming from, and ultimately have started losing respect for food. And ultimately, what we are trying to do here with Too Good To Go is really bringing value back to surplus food, which otherwise would have ended up on landfills. And this ultimately helps cities to meet their climate targets. Still today, food waste is still not seen on top of the agenda when it comes to cities moving into adaptation and mitigation for climate change. And this is exactly what we will try to change. In addition, with this initiative, we try to engage all segments of society, from schools to consumers to businesses, all the way to the political standing point as well within the municipalities, on how they can engage with food waste and make it more manageable and more efficient as well going forward. To give you an idea with Too Good To Go, for those that might be aware of it, others might not be, Too Good To Go is the biggest B2C marketplace for surplus food. And ultimately what it allows you to do is for bakeries, restaurants, supermarkets, hotels, you name it, are able to put certain magic bags onto the app that allows them basically to make sure that the oversupply at the end of the day that they have produced on that day doesn't end up going to waste. So what happens is that they put this surplus food into magic bags. You can imagine these magic bags as kind of surprise bags where people are able to find them via our app, which they can download for free. They basically pay via the app, they show the receipt, and then go pick up those magic bags full of delicious and edible food at the end of the day at a prescribed time. And what this means is that over 225,000 meals are saved on a daily basis. If you break it down into seconds, I think we're almost at three meals every single second being saved via Too Good To Go. And of course, this is a win-win-win solution. So the big win for consumers is that they get perfectly edible food, surplus food that would have been paid at a higher price a few minutes before that. They get it at 1/3 of the price, because that ultimately would have ended up going to waste, and they get it at a reduced price. And they're also able to discover new amazing places in their neighborhood. So it really connects them to closer stores in their neighborhood as well. The second win is for businesses, because they ultimately make sure that for food surplus, for food that used to go to waste, they actually earn extra revenue, and they also get more exposure to new consumers in the neighborhood as well. And most importantly, I think as well, the biggest win is that all food produced is also food consumed, and that we make sure that we are reusing this food and redistributing it to people at a lower price. So far, we have really seen impact at scale. We started 6 years ago, and now last year we were able to save 52 million meals from going to waste. So we have really expanded at a rapid scale. When I first joined Too Good To Go 3.5 years ago, we were 200 people. Now we're over 1,300. Spread across 17 different countries. So it's really a success story everywhere we have gone so far. To give you an idea, we're in 15 countries across Europe. As you can see with the colors, we're pretty much in Western Europe so far, but Eastern Europe, of course, is also on our radar going forward. I'm from Luxembourg, and as you can see, there's a little hole in the middle, which we haven't covered yet, and hopefully that will happen soon as well. But we have also made our jump across the pond, and we are now based in many different cities across the US and also in Canada now as well. We have saved over 144 million meals from going to waste, and are also being used by 60 million, almost 60 million people worldwide as well. Some of the restaurants and bakeries and canteens that we're working with, of course, those range from big players all the way to smaller stores, which might not be a big name to you, but ultimately still have a lot of food surplus from going to waste. So what this means is that we as a business are a very, very local business as well. We really want to make sure that we help, of course, the bigger companies, but also, you know, your usual deli down the road on the corner as well. And that makes it very scalable as a solution as well. And that's also why it is so attractive for cities. And this is why we have started engaging more and more with city mayors and municipalities, because they see, of course, a massive need in making sure that all food produced is also food consumed in their cities, and to really also become more aligned on the overall climate targets that they have. And this is why we brought Cities Against Food Waste to their attention. Cities Against Food Waste is pretty much a declaration where we encourage municipalities and cities to sign up with us and to really start communicating about the fact that food waste is one of the biggest contributors to climate change, that they are trying to do something about it, that they're putting targets in place, and ultimately not just talking about it, but also driving tangible action. And this tangible action is done in two ways. The first one is by really encouraging local stores, canteen operators, event planners to redistribute all of this food surplus that would otherwise have gone to waste within the city. So it ranges from us, for example, working with Toulouse in the city in France, helping them to make sure that all food surplus from canteens within the municipality doesn't end up going to waste, or an event that we have organized in Saint-Denis, which was close to Paris, where we also encourage to basically make sure that we created a zero food waste event as well, to make sure that no food surplus ends up going to waste. So it's very wide ranges of different practices that we have done so far. And the third aspect of it is not only redistributing this food surplus, but also going further up the food waste hierarchy to also help prevent food from going to waste. And that means a lot of education, raising awareness, sharing information, particularly with households, because in Germany and in France, where we are focusing our attention on at the moment, that's where most of the food is going to waste at the end of the day. So it's really about raising awareness and influencing them going forward as well. One way we definitely engaged with a lot of cities so far in France is through our schools project. So we created a Schools Against Food Waste curriculum, where we basically allow teachers to download a free curriculum for their classes to engage 8 to 11-year-olds on the issue of food waste. And this is completely free. We have done it together with the Ministry of Education in France, and it has been spread across the different schools. We tested it out in 12 schools from last August until this February. We got a lot of feedback and we tried to change it, adapt it a little bit. And we have now launched it for the entire French country. And we have now over 5,000 schools who have now signed up for us to become part of it for the next curriculum year in 2022, which is extremely exciting and ultimately really helps to push the message of food waste in the canteen with kids, in the classroom, but also bringing back that information towards their households as well, and to really encourage parents to make a change with it as well. Lastly, what I just wanted to talk about, what were some of the key success factors around this initiative. Although it's a pretty new initiative, which we only started last year in both Germany and France, you might wonder, why did we start with these two countries? Is that because they are one of the most established countries for Too Good To Go? We have a pretty good foothold already in those markets. We have a lot of good connections already. So it really allowed these kind of conversations to flourish and really making sure that this private-public collaboration really works. And I can tell you that it does take a lot of time to engage with public institutions, because ultimately us as a profit-making company or social impact company in itself, it's still difficult to basically come into the public eye and to be able to show to people that we are a solution and we mean good, and that we really try to reinvest the revenue that we gain from our application in creating bigger good as well. And that's really our principle. You know, we are a B Corp company, so that really means that we see business as a driver for change, and we really want to show people that business, you know, doesn't mean that you cannot do something good, but ultimately that we have the resources in-house and the marketing teams, the revenue, etc., to basically push all of this impact going further. And I think that just needs a lot of thinking together as well with the public institutions to make sure that we are able to collaborate going forward. So we are now looking at different best practices, different projects like the one mentioned with schools, the one with canteens, with events, testing out different ways of how we can redistribute some of that surplus and adapt it to our certain markets. And hopefully then one day we'll be able to kickstart this initiative across all countries where we're at, going all the way to the US and Canada, across all countries in Europe. And that is really something where we're trying to gain momentum locally as well, to really show to people that, yes, you know, we're a solution provider, we are a private company, but we're able also to create big impact on the city level as well by engaging both local stores and also consumers at the same time. That's it for me. If you have any questions, of course, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the insightful presentation, Philip. Indeed, it's quite important to have cities meet climate targets and help put food on their agenda from multiple angles, and sustainable businesses can indeed help with that. So thank you very much for this. I want to introduce our last speakers for today. They are Franklin Otiende, researcher at Kisumu Local Interaction Platform in Kenya, and Harrison Otieno, chairman at Kibuye Market Waste Management, also in Kenya. They will share with us alternative approaches to recycling organic waste from open-air markets in the city of Kisumu in Kenya to recover resources. We're happy to have you both here with us today. Please, the floor is yours to present.
Thank you so much. First, I'll introduce a clip. Kisumu Local Interaction Platform is a group of stakeholders in Kisumu City that work together to solve the pressing challenges in Kisumu. Next slide. So in Kisumu, one of the biggest challenges that we've had is to manage solid waste. Indeed, in Kisumu, like in many cities, the larger bulk of waste is organic from farms and from households and kitchens. So in Kisumu, our dump site was quite close from the city. In fact, barely 2 kilometers from the city center, and this was quite an eyesore. Therefore, at CLIP, working together with waste entrepreneurs and the city, we decided to bring our heads together and see how to at least have some initiatives to manage this waste. So having worked together through a co-production process, we thought of trying 3 approaches to manage this waste, at least as a demonstration to other people or to the city dwellers on how to reduce our waste from reaching the dump site. So these three were composting, briquetting, and biodigestion. Next. So in this circular economy, we are at the last stage, recover, where we do composting to recover nutrients. We do briquetting to recover heat energy, and at the same time biogas production to recover energy. So before we would let the organic waste to end into the dump site, or to enter the dump site, we would do our best to recover these resources from the waste. Next. So at the composting level, we realize that most of organic waste comes from the market, and in Kisumu, our biggest market is Kibuye. So a lot of vegetative waste, organic from Kibuye, would end up at the dump site, and this makes the greatest proportion of the waste at the dump site. So having looked at that aspect of the market, we decided to try and compost this waste. So working together with Kibuye and the city donating a parcel where we can demonstrate, Kibuye working together to implement, and we as a CLIP bring the technical know-how. We tested composting by mixing various organic waste, and we had one that could work. Initially, we produced our compost, but we didn't package it as you see it. So when we didn't package it, it was not selling as well. So we realized that we needed to package it, and then it would compete in the market with other inorganic fertilizers. And this realization made us to realize some good progress. Next. At briquetting, most people in Kisumu, at least in the peri-urban areas, we still use firewood and charcoal. Few members or few households use gas for cooking. So rather than leave a lot of the waste, especially sawdust and charcoal dust, to go to waste, at least we could recover energy from it and be used in the household. So we prototyped a briquetting machine and experimented with several rations of waste, organic waste from the market, until we arrived at a mixture that was both safe for indoor use and also yields a lot of energy. And tried it amongst a few households, and the feedback was encouraging. And indeed, there are people who have picked it and are making money out of it, and at the same time saving a lot of this waste that would otherwise end at the dump site. Next slide. The final briquette is already shown there, which we're using piston method, and it performs better than the other briquettes that we have around in the city. So this has really generated interest from entrepreneurs, those who are selling briquettes, and even from Kibuye CBO, and they have picked it and are actually producing more from it and selling. Next slide. The last that we did was to try and generate biogas from organic waste that would decompose and release gas. This was difficult because, unlike briquettes, you cannot carry gas, or trying to package gas at the market level would be difficult. So we tried to prototype this one at institutions like some NGOs where they have communities around. We have met success in that there is already at Obunga a community kitchen where we can use gas from fermenting biodegradable organic matter. And this has helped us to salvage this from the dump site and get energy from it. And what remains has also been used in farms to at least recover the nutrients from it. So from the compost, we only recover nutrients. From the briquettes, we only recover energy. Maybe the dust that remains could be used in farms. But from this one, we recover energy. And also that which remains is we also recover nutrients from it. And this has helped in peri-urban agriculture. Our method of working with the CBO and the city has been productive because in this, we as researchers, we only bring the technical part and we demonstrate the methodology of doing it. The government, that is the city, has been giving us goodwill to work and to come and bring people from various neighboring towns to learn how to briquette, how to compost, and how to do biogas production. And then it has been a way to transfer this knowledge to the community without writing a lot. They come and be part of it and they see how it is done. And once the demonstration is done, they've already picked it. Next. So our method of working has been good in that the technology that we employ is picked up immediately, and we don't have to write a lot of tracks and feedback workshops. But as we work with the community together and with the city, they already see the impact of the things we are trying, and this has really enabled us to work better with the city and the community. And even when we leave, the initiatives that we have tried are picked and they just go on, even as we researchers look about something to pick up. Next. So these have already highlighted that this has already made us to succeed. Next slide. So thank you so much for listening. And that's how we've been trying to recover nutrients and recover energy from our organic waste, rather than leaving it to go to the dump site and then the energy to pollute our lake and the energy to just get lost in the air and pollute our atmosphere. Thank you so much. These are just extra slides that they can be shared with the members around. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for putting together this interesting presentation. And I think it's very surprising to see that so little waste is being recovered, but at the same time, very inspiring to see your efforts to find different solutions to use them into different products that benefit the community in so many ways. Seems like a win-win situation to improve community livelihoods, environmental conditions, and incentive organic farming practices at the same time. So thank you so much again for sharing. So there's already a lot of food for thought, and if anybody has some question, now it's time to address them for the panelists. So I would love to give the floor to Sarah Carroll again to go through some of them. So back to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Maria. We seem to have some shy participants today. You haven't put any questions into the Q&A box. Maybe we could have done a better job at advertising that during the webinar. I can see that there's definitely been some chat going on. Certainly been really interesting to see the range of solutions that each of the cities and Too Good To Go are involved with to promote a circular food system around the world. So lots of food for thought there. We don't have a lot of time for questions because we do want to kind of end on the hour as we said we would, but we probably have around 5 to 7 minutes if someone from the audience would like to share an initiative that they're involved with, or to ask a question to one of our panelists. Equally, our panelists could use this as an opportunity to ask a question of another panelist. So if you would like to ask a question or share about an initiative that you're involved with, let me know in the chat or raise your hand. Otherwise, we can move towards closing the session. Are there any questions or sharebacks from the floor? Okay, I can't see any Franklin, floor is yours.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Felipe, in this too bad to go to waste, do they only take packaged food, or what about food that somebody cooked and it was left over? What do you do with that?
So it's a very good question, Franklin. So we do both, to be honest. So we have packaged goods. So for example, we're working together with the likes of Nestle, Unilever, supermarkets who have packaged food. But we're also working with local restaurants and even hotels who have buffet. So that is prepared food. And what we allow here is that people come with their own Tupperwares or with their own kind of boxes to pick up the food, fill it up, and then go back home with it. So the most important is that we are B2C, so from a business to a consumer. So it's not between you and your friend, for example, or you between a neighbor. So it's not between consumers, but it's really businesses that have too much food going to consumers. But it's both fresh produce, packaged, cooked food, anything you like.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I have a closing question for each of our speakers today. Okay, I'm just going to go for it then. My closing question, and if everyone could answer just because we don't have a lot of time, in one sentence, that would be great. My question is, if there's one thing that you would suggest that urban food actors focus on to catalyze this change towards a circular food system, what would that be? So if there was one thing to focus on for urban food actors to catalyze a change towards a circular food system, what would that be? I will give you 10 seconds, I guess, to think about that. And then I think maybe we'll start from the top of the agenda. So Ava, that would be you first.
Yeah, I would just say consumer patterns. Definitely, we see a lot of waste that, depending on the market, that can happen at the production level and the distribution level. But at least in the US context, we do see most of that waste happening at the consumer level. And so consumer education and outreach and addressing just consumer patterns.
Brilliant, thanks. Leah from Sao Paulo.
Very difficult, just one phrase. But I would say take people to know who is growing the food, so they know how is it, and they can get importance to what is grown and to how to use everything is there. So this is, I think it's very important, and as well to have all the garbage that's not garbage back to the agriculture, because it's not waste, and we are contaminating and making a poison of one thing. It's very, very important for agriculture and to get transform food in food again. So I think get people to know who's growing, and you have this thing more close is going to be a big thing to do so.
Thanks, Leah. Felipe?
I would say that really include everyone in the discussion. And that basically means collaboration is always a big word. So I'm not going to always use collaboration, but I would say really that both the public sphere and the private institutions work hand in hand to share best practices and do testings of different initiatives and to really share that with the world. And I think you guys, what you're doing here is a perfect example to really connect the dots and really bring people on the table together and to really see both public and private working together, because public have the right intentions, the right targets, but sometimes may not have the solutions or be able to put all of that into action. And that's why the private sector is there, and to really have that conversation and those actions together, I would say.
Great. Franklin, that gives you the last word from the speakers today.
Thank you. I think from my point, I would say that governments should start initiatives to empower the urban populace, because urban local authorities cannot do it alone. But if they empower people and they start initiatives from which people can learn, then our consolidated energies will work a change in the food system.
Thank you, Franklin. I think that's a lovely way to end this role that governments of all different kinds can play to catalyze change in our food system. There was one question in the Q&A now about the discussion being posted online, and it will be, and Marion will give us, and Maria will give us the details for that now as we move towards closing. So as we close, we're going to share some useful resources for any urban food actors to go to if they're looking for a way to start in the space. And so I'll start quickly with some resources from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. We have a whole page related to food and the circular economy on our website. So that really does have a wealth of resources that you can go to be inspired, but also to help you, as we've used this phrase a few times today, connect the dots between food and climate change, between food and biodiversity loss. And so the first place to go is our Cities and Circular Economy for Food report, which really is about urban food systems and these 3 key actions that urban food actors need to take to realize the circular food system. So that's supporting food that's grown regeneratively and sourcing local food where that's possible. The second pillar of this vision is making the most of food. So it's looking at byproducts, food rescue and redistribution, all these value addition activities. And the last is designing and marketing healthier menus. Linked to that report, we also developed a city self-assessment, which will take you 15 to 30 minutes to complete, which really will help you to understand where as a city government you could concentrate your efforts. The Big Food Redesign is a report that we've recently launched that really focuses on this role and the ambition around designing and marketing healthier food products and menus, and specifically the role of retailers and fast-moving consumer goods companies. And then these last 2 reports that I've linked will help. They both have specific sections related to food. The first one, Completing the Picture, will help you to connect food to the climate change story, and the second one will help you to connect food to a biodiversity story. So they both have chapters or deep dives into food, which I hope will be useful. So that's from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I'll hand back to Maria and Marion from ICLEI to share their resources and close the session.
Thank you, Sarah, for moderating this and sharing all these great examples. Jumping on this train from the side of ICLEI, more examples beyond today's webinar can be found in the City Practitioner's Handbook for Circular Food Systems. You can find the link in the chat, where experiences from up to 50 local governments are showcased. So this handbook basically provides local governments with concrete tools their peers are using in order to facilitate the transition to circularity, all the way from stakeholder engagement to designing effective policies. So with this, I would love to thank you all very much for sharing and explaining all these very inspiring examples. I think I can speak for everybody when I say that it's been particularly great to see that everyone's showcase the many different leverages cities have to address food waste in a systemic manner. I found, to quickly share with you, I found some common success factors to be using various channels to reach out to households, ensuring vulnerable groups that are targeted benefit from initiatives, leveraging digital platforms for outreach and data collection, and last but not least, education and partnership with schools. So to close these sessions, I would also like to remind you that this whole event will be posted on the Circulab webpage. You can find also the link in the chat, and also a reminder of the upcoming webinars from the Circular Cities in Action series. Next one is Circular Fashion and Textile, that will take place on October 25th, and the last one about circular water and sanitation on October 27th. So you can register at the link in the chat as well. Lastly, to stay in touch, please feel free to reach us at circular.development@iclay.org. So thank you all for being here and have a great day.
Thank you.